My neighbor's teenagers blasted music every night, smirking, "You can't stop us. We can do whatever we want on our property." When I called noise control, their parents mocked me, saying, "It's just kids having fun, learn to deal with it." Their smug attitude disappeared when the judge slammed the gavel and said, "Congratulations, you're now liable for thousands in noise violation fines." When I moved into my modest home on Oak Street in Springfield, Illinois, I was looking forward to the peace and quiet of suburban life. The neighborhood was filled with well-kept lawns, friendly waves from neighbors, and the occasional sounds of children playing. It seemed like the perfect place to settle down. A few months after I settled in, the house next door was sold to the Thompson family. They appeared to be a typical family. Mr. Thompson was a construction worker, Mrs. Thompson was a part-time nurse, and they had 2 teenage sons, Jake and Kyle. Initially, our interactions were pleasant, exchanging greetings and small talk over the fence. I was hopeful that we would have a friendly, neighborly relationship. As summer approached, things began to change. Jake and Kyle started hosting gatherings in their backyard. At first, it was just a few friends over for barbecues, but soon these get-togethers turned into full-blown parties. The music was loud, with heavy bass that made my windows vibrate. Laughter and shouting carried on late into the night. I tried to be understanding, thinking it was just a phase, but the sleepless nights started to take a toll on me. One particularly restless night, around midnight, I decided to address the issue directly. I walked over to the Thompsons' house and knocked on the door. After a few moments, Mrs. Thompson answered, looking slightly annoyed. "Mrs. Thompson, I'm sorry to bother you so late, but the noise from the backyard is quite loud." "It's been difficult for me to sleep," I said, trying to keep my tone polite. She sighed and replied, "They're just kids having fun, Robert. Maybe you should learn to deal with it." Taken aback by her dismissive attitude, I responded, "I understand they're enjoying themselves, but it's affecting my rest. Could you ask them to lower the volume?" She shrugged, "I'll see what I can do," and closed the door. That night, the noise continued unabated. The following day, I decided to call the local non-emergency police line to inquire about noise ordinances. The officer informed me that Springfield had specific regulations prohibiting excessive noise after 10 p.m. and advised me to file a complaint if the disturbances persisted. Armed with this information, I approached Mr. Thompson the next evening as he was getting home from work. "Mr. Thompson, I wanted to talk to you about the late-night noise from your backyard. It's been keeping me up, and I learned that there's a city ordinance against excessive noise after 10 p.m., I explained. He chuckled, "Come on, Robert. They're teenagers. Let them have their fun. It's our property. We can do what we want." Frustrated by their indifference, I decided to document the disturbances. Each night, I recorded videos of the noise levels, noting the times and dates. After a week of evidence gathering, I filed a formal complaint with the Springfield Police Department. An officer visited the Thompsons, issuing a warning about the noise ordinance. For a few days, the nights were peaceful. But soon, the parties resumed, louder than before. It felt as though they were intentionally defying the warning. I reached out to the police again, providing my documented evidence. This time, citations were issued. The Thompsons were infuriated. Mrs. Thompson confronted me one afternoon. "Are you serious, Robert? Calling the cops on us? They're just kids," she yelled. "I tried speaking with you both, but nothing changed." I had no other choice, I responded calmly. The situation escalated when I received a letter indicating that the Thompsons were contesting the citations in court. I was summoned to testify about the disturbances. On the day of the hearing, both families presented their cases. I provided my recordings and detailed logs of the noise disturbances. The presiding judge listened intently before delivering his verdict. Based on the evidence, it's clear that the Thompson family violated the city's noise ordinance multiple times. Therefore, I am upholding the citations. The Thompsons are liable for the associated fines, the judge declared. The smugness that once adorned Mr. and Mrs. Thompson's faces vanished. They were now responsible for thousands in fines. After the hearing, Mr. Thompson approached me, his demeanor subdued. "Robert, we didn't realize how serious this was. We apologize for the trouble we've caused," he admitted. "I appreciate that, Mr. Thompson. I never wanted it to come to this. I just needed some peace," I replied. From that day forward, the late-night parties ceased. The neighborhood returned to the tranquil place I had initially moved into. This experience taught me the importance of standing up for one's rights and the value of open communication. While I wish things had been resolved differently, I'm grateful for the return of peace and quiet in my home. After the court ruling, I hoped things would finally go back to normal. The peace lasted maybe 2 weeks. Then strange things started happening. At first, it was little things. My trash cans were tipped over almost every morning. I figured maybe it was raccoons or the wind. But when I found greasy chicken bones and soda cans clearly thrown from the Thompsons' side of the fence, I knew it wasn't animals. One morning, I walked out to find a big scratch across the driver's side of my car. I had parked in my usual spot in the driveway. It was deep, paint peeled back, metal exposed. No note. No explanation. I checked my security cam, but whoever did it stayed just outside the frame. I didn't have proof, but I had a good idea who was behind it. The next week, someone spray-painted "snitch" across my back fence in red. I called the police, but without direct evidence, they couldn't do much. They told me I could file a report, but it would probably go nowhere. They advised security upgrades and more lighting. So I did just that, installed motion lights, bought better cameras, even got one of those Ring doorbells. It didn't stop. One night, just after midnight, I woke up to loud thumping sounds. It wasn't music, it was this weird, rhythmic pounding. I looked out my window and saw Jake and Kyle in their backyard, slamming a baseball bat into a trash bin. They weren't even trying to hide it. When I turned on my floodlights, they stopped, looked straight at my house, and left. The next morning, I called their parents. Mary answered, and before I could even say anything, she said, "Maybe you should move if you don't like the neighborhood." I hung up. At this point, I started logging everything. I kept a journal of every incident, every time I called the cops, every conversation. I printed screenshots from my camera footage, even if it didn't show a clear face. I wanted a record of all of it, but then things escalated. One afternoon, I came home from the grocery store to find my front lawn torn up. Someone had driven over it twice. Deep tire tracks, crushed flower beds, mud all over the walkway. My neighbor across the street, Mr. Garcia, saw it happen and called me immediately. He said it was a black pickup truck, tinted windows, sped off after making the second round. Guess who drives a black pickup? I went to the police again, and this time I brought Mr. Garcia with me to give a statement. They finally agreed to open a case. I still didn't have camera footage of the truck in the act, but having a witness gave it more weight. That night, I didn't sleep. The next day, I started getting strange calls. Blocked numbers. Silent on the other end. Then they started breathing. Not saying anything, just breathing. It was creepy. I bought a call blocker and contacted my phone provider, but again, not much could be done unless they could trace it. The police said to keep a log. Another log. I was exhausted. I started questioning myself. Was it all in my head? Was I being too paranoid? Then the fire happened. It was a Saturday night. I was watching TV when I smelled something off, burning plastic, smoke. I ran out back and saw the side of my fence on fire. Flames already rising. I grabbed the garden hose and sprayed it down while calling 911. Fire department came fast, put it out before it reached the house. They said it looked like someone lit something against the fence, maybe fireworks or a gasoline-soaked rag. Arson was suspected, but again, no solid evidence. That was the moment everything changed. This wasn't about noise anymore. This was harassment, vandalism, intimidation, and now arson. I filed a restraining order request against the family. My lawyer, a no-nonsense guy named Greg, helped me build a case. We included everything: police reports, damage photos, neighbor statements, the fire report. A court date was set. As that day approached, the Thompsons started pretending nothing had ever happened. Jake and Kyle waved at me with fake smiles. Mary even brought out cookies to share with a neighbor 2 houses down. Like they were the victims. Like I was the crazy one. The day before the hearing, a letter was left in my mailbox, no stamp, no envelope. Just a single sheet of paper with bold black letters. "You'll regret this." I gave it to my lawyer. At the hearing, Greg presented everything. The judge listened closely. The Thompsons' lawyer tried to downplay everything, saying boys would be boys and that I was exaggerating. But then something happened I didn't expect. Mr. Garcia, the neighbor across the street, stood up and asked to speak. The judge allowed it. Garcia said, on record, that he had seen the Thompsons harass me for weeks. That he saw them throw bottles into my yard, heard them mocking me in loud voices, even saw one of the boys key my car. The courtroom went quiet. I looked over at the Thompsons. For the first time, they didn't look smug. They looked pale. The judge leaned forward. If even half of this is true, we're talking about serious civil harassment. He said he needed time to review everything and would deliver a ruling soon. Now I'm waiting. I've taken time off work. I barely sleep. Every sound outside makes me jump. I don't know how this is going to end. But I'm not backing down. A few days after the hearing, things went strangely quiet. No parties. No yelling. No trash on my lawn. For the first time in months, it felt like a normal neighborhood. Even the weather seemed calmer. I started to believe that maybe, just maybe, they realized they pushed too far and were backing off. I still locked everything twice, still checked my cameras twice a day, but I felt the pressure ease. Then I got a knock on the door. It was a man in a gray hoodie holding a clipboard. He introduced himself as someone from the Springfield Homeowners Association. I don't live in an HOA. He asked, casually, "Are you the one who's been harassing the Thompson family?" I blinked. "Excuse me." He went on, saying they'd received multiple complaints about me targeting a family with 2 minors, making them feel unsafe, possibly endangering their well-being. He said he was going to file an HOA infraction report. I told him we didn't have an HOA. He smirked, shrugged, and walked away. It was a bluff. An intimidation tactic. I reviewed my security footage later. The man wasn't anyone from the city. He wasn't even dressed professionally. He parked 2 blocks away and walked in. I handed the footage to my lawyer, Greg, who shook his head and said, "They're getting desperate." That night, I noticed all my cameras had blinking red lights. Usually, they're blue. I logged into my system and got an error. All 6 outdoor cameras had gone offline. I went outside and saw tiny cuts in the wires where they met the junction box. Whoever did it knew what they were doing, cut just enough to kill the power without tripping the alarm. The next morning, I found another message. This time written in chalk across my driveway. "You think the court can protect you?" I called the police again. They sent someone, but all they could do was document it. Greg told me we could bring it up in court once the restraining order hearing concluded. But that wasn't for another 2 weeks. Meanwhile, Greg did some digging. He found out that Kyle, the younger Thompson boy, had been in trouble at school before. Vandalism. Fights. There was even an incident involving a BB gun shot through a teacher's car window. But none of that ever made it past the school's internal board. The records weren't public. His dad apparently knew people. Greg also learned something else. The truck that ran over my lawn? Registered not to Mr. Thompson, but to his brother, a guy named Rick who'd been arrested 3 years ago for assault during a bar fight. The truck had no insurance. Just sat in their driveway most of the time, until, I guess, they wanted to use it to deliver a message. We added that to the case file. Then something even weirder happened. A woman from Child Protective Services knocked on my door one afternoon. She said she was following up on an anonymous tip about disturbing behavior involving minors. She asked if I'd had any confrontations with neighborhood kids or if I'd ever shouted at anyone underage. I told her everything. The noise, the damage, the court case, the threats. She looked shocked. Said, this wasn't mentioned in the report at all. I offered her a copy of my files. She accepted it and thanked me, saying, this explains a lot. They're trying to weaponize the system against you. Greg was furious. He filed a formal complaint with the court, stating that the Thompsons were engaging in retaliatory behavior. He requested emergency protection measures until the full hearing. The court approved temporary restrictions. Jake and Kyle were not allowed within 50 feet of my property. Neither was Mr. or Mrs. Thompson unless passing through the street. For 2 days, it was quiet. Then a small drone flew over my backyard. It hovered there, buzzing like a mosquito. I waved at it. It didn't move. I threw a rock. It dodged it and zipped away. Greg said, they're trying to intimidate you without violating the order. We filed a report, but the police said without proof it was theirs, they couldn't act. I installed netting over my patio and a jamming device. I knew this wasn't over. One morning I went out for coffee. When I came back, there were tire marks again, but this time on the sidewalk in front of my house. A broken ceramic plate was near my mailbox. It had my name painted on it, then smashed. This time, I didn't call the police. I sent it directly to Greg. He made one phone call to a contact in the city's prosecutor office. That afternoon, the prosecutor added a formal harassment charge to our complaint. Later that night, I got a knock on the door. It was Kyle. Alone. Hands shaking. He said, I think my dad's going to do something stupid. I don't want any part of this anymore. I didn't say a word. Just held the door frame, silent. He kept going, voice cracking. He thinks if we keep pushing you, you'll break and move out. He doesn't want the fines. He doesn't want the city involved. But he's losing it. He said he'd make it go away. He has stuff in the garage, like bad stuff. I asked him, why are you telling me? He said, because he's not just hurting you. He scares us too. And then he ran off. I called Greg. He said, now things are about to get serious. Greg wasted no time. He called the prosecutor and told them everything: Kyle's warning, the stuff in the garage, the threats, the broken plate with my name on it. The prosecutor said that was enough to request a search warrant. We didn't know exactly what stuff meant, but if it was bad enough to scare Kyle, it was bad enough to involve law enforcement. 2 days later, unmarked cars parked down the street early in the morning. Springfield PD and 2 men in suits knocked on the Thompsons' door around 6:30 a.m. I watched from behind my curtain. At first, nobody answered. Then finally, Mr. Thompson opened the door, shirtless, looking groggy and annoyed. They spoke for a few minutes. Then officers entered the house. An hour later, they wheeled out a large black bin covered in a tarp. Another officer carried out what looked like a homemade drone controller and several small containers wrapped in evidence bags. Then came a locked toolbox. The agents didn't explain anything, but one of them nodded at me as they walked past. That was the first time I actually felt a shred of safety in months. The fallout came fast. The local paper ran a story 2 days later. Springfield man under investigation for harassment, intimidation, and suspicion of criminal mischief. They didn't use names, but everyone in the neighborhood knew. Turns out, Mr. Thompson had a long history of petty fights and had even been caught tampering with his old employer's equipment after getting fired. He had friends on the inside who kept things quiet. But this time, he went too far. They found stolen city property in his garage, street signs, cones, even a radar gun. The drone? Rigged with a modified camera and audio sensor. He was spying on me. And others. The most disturbing part? They found sketches of my property. Angles. Entry points. My routine. When I left for work. When I came home. My garbage days. Even what kind of locks I used. He wasn't just trying to scare me. He was planning something worse. The judge fast-tracked the harassment case. Greg went in hard. He presented everything: our logs, the footage, the vandalism, the threats, the drone footage, the CPS visit, the fake HOA guy, even the shattered plate with my name. But what really changed everything was Kyle. He testified. He told the court about his dad's threats, about how his mom helped cover things up, how they taught him and his brother to mess with me, to break me down. He cried during most of it, said he felt trapped, scared. Then Jake, the older brother, stood up and asked to speak. No one expected that. Jake told the judge he hated what they'd done. That it started as just messing with the old guy next door and became a full-blown war. He admitted to scratching my car, throwing trash, writing snitch on the fence. But he said his dad kept pushing it further, threatening to hurt me if I didn't stop reporting them. The courtroom went silent. Then the judge looked at me. She said, "Mr. Rivera, it's rare that cases like this go so far. You were right to report it. You were right to document it. And I admire your patience." Then she turned to the Thompsons. "To the parents of these boys, you turned your children into weapons. You mocked the law, harassed your neighbor, and escalated a petty conflict into criminal behavior." She slammed the gavel and said, "I am approving a full restraining order. Mr. and Mrs. Thompson are barred from contacting or coming within 300 feet of Mr. Rivera for 5 years. They are ordered to pay restitution, damages, and court fees totaling $58,000. Their home is now under lien until paid." She paused. "Congratulations. You are now legally and financially ruined." The courtroom exploded with murmurs. Mr. Thompson turned red, then white, then didn't say a word. His wife just cried. The boys sat with their heads down. The house next door went up for sale 2 weeks later. Bank-owned. Foreclosed. Jake and Kyle went to live with their aunt in another state. I got a letter from Jake a month after they left. A real letter. Apologizing. He said he hoped I found peace. As for me, I wish I could say I came out of this clean. But the truth is, it changed me. I don't trust people the way I used to. I keep my blinds shut more than I should. I installed a second lock on every door, even the mailbox. Sometimes I blame myself for not pushing back harder at the beginning, for letting it drag on, for believing, way too long, that logic and kindness could fix it. But the worst part? Sometimes I wonder if I let the hate go too far. I didn't break any laws. I followed the rules. But I wanted revenge. I wanted them punished. Not just stopped, punished. And that feeling, it stuck. So yeah, I got my peace back. But it came with a price.